Hey, it's Don, the Auction Professor. Today we're going to give you another item to look for. It's pewter, vintage pewter, and I do find these types of items at local thrift stores, antique malls, flea markets, estate sales, garage sales, across the board. Even just for scrap metal, they are worth buying. Let's hop over there and show you some of what we're talking about right now. So this is vintage pewter. Now, you're not going to run into these really early pieces all the time. I know people are going to tell me you're not going to find this kind of stuff, but I find it fairly regularly. Including my last video, I found a 1910 piece of pewter sitting in a thrift store just right out in plain sight for $1.99. I have found pieces dating back to the 1700s at a thrift store before. There's many of these pieces that most people won't be able to identify the type, the variety, the age, just from lack of knowledge. So this one here is just a primo piece. It's dated 1666. Really nice early one, $1,475. This one reminds me of the chalice, the Holy Grail kind of. It's a goblet. This is a regular piece of basic drinking ware at one point in our history, so rather interesting. A lot of the pewter would have just been everyday items to most people. Now here's a graduated pewter measuring set. This is typical what you would find. You could see these as tankards as well, but they're for measuring out dry goods and liquids and things along that line. It's basically a measuring set from back in the day. It was very precise. They were done by standards. Most of these will have touch marks saying where they were from. Who made them, basically, is the gist on it. And you can see a ton of marks on this one here. There is the measurements on each one. Now, they're not always going to have the measurements, and they don't always have to have a lid like these do to have some value. And this one's $549 for the set now. So that's not extremely expensive for what you're getting here. It's a 7-piece set. Even the individual ones from these still will sell. Now here's a giant trophy. It's a tankard, Magdalen College from Oxford. Rather interesting one. Again, you can see the date straight out as day on the face of this one here. I have found trophies, not something quite like this, but I do run into trophies quite often, especially at estate sales and local live auctions. Those are the two best places to find stuff like this at, estate sales and local live auctions. So really nice one here. It went for $1,504 in U.S. currency. This is from England. Now here is a lidded tankard. Some of these can be called flagons. They're like measures almost to some extent, but this is probably a drinking one. Even with damage to some of these items, just due to the age of them, they still sell for some insane amounts of money. This one's from 1690. William Ford is the company, or the maker of this, I should say. $1,475. Just a real nice example of one of these. Most of these were made by a smith that would make pewter. Maybe they made tin. Maybe they made silver as well. This is the poor man's equivalent of sterling, I guess you could say, because you could shine it up. Now, there is lead in some of these, so they would be harmful to use for actual drinking out of, but anyway. This is a pewter tin and jade teapot from China. Now, these Chinese ones are well collected. They come in all kinds of fanciful shapes and designs. At the same time, Japan was making some of theirs out of cast iron. It's just easier to work with substance here, the pewter. Most of these earlier ones have textual marks to them too, just as you see here. Really nice piece, $1,355. Now, just because it's pewter in Chinese doesn't mean it's worth a ton of money. You can find some of these all the way down to, say, $50 to $100 range, which is not really much when you consider how old some of these are. Now here's a Tudrick pewter, which is a marking you'll find on the bottom of these. Archibald Knox for Liberty and Company is who made this. Really nice piece here. This is Art Nouveau all the way. I mean, just a spectacular piece. Marks on the bottom as well, as I said, Tudrick, which is what you would expect to find on a piece like this. If you saw this and didn't buy it, you know, again, you may be in the wrong field. This is just a phenomenal piece here of Art Nouveau. Went for $1,108. Now here's another British piece from Penrith by John Grave. Usually these will have touch marks. This is a very early one. Most of them, as I said, will have touch marks or something similar to that, saying the size, construction, even worn. beat up, cracked, these still sell for some decent money. $975 for these. Most of these as well could be black when you find them, just looking awful, dinged and beat up. Until you can see the touch mark, you don't know a value on them. So for $1 or something, I'll usually buy pieces like this. For scrap, you can scrap these for a few dollars also, just for the content of lead. Here's a half pint. This is a measure. Same similar item that you would find from Bristol. This is from England. Fothergill and Sons. So really nice one here. Touch marks on most of these are what you would expect to find. Now this has a big seal. They're marking on the bottom. A lot of the U.S. ones will have a seal. If any of these two have an eagle of some sorts on the bottom, I would definitely recommend buying them. As long as it's a touch mark in an earlier one, most of the eagle ones sell for some good money. Now, we've sold pieces of pewter up to $1,000, and these are pieces of pewter we found at thrift stores. The plates are usually what I find. Most people don't think anything of it, especially if they're dinged and worn and dark colored. They usually go for just a couple of bucks. Most people don't realize the markings on them. They don't see it. They miss it. They're black. They blend right in with everything else. Here's a pewter pint mug, as I said. Danforth is a name you will always find. It goes all the way back into the colonial era, and I believe this is his son with Boardman, which is another person who got together and made these. TD and SB marked, very well described in this one. $750. Now here's an ewer by Blanchett Picard. This is circa 1895, Art Nouveau era. These pewter ones sometimes are mixed up with newer ones from the 40s and 50s. It doesn't look like much fancifulness to it. It could have chips, could have a crack to it, it could be bent. It could be black as pitch in this, and people just might pass these up. $664 US in this one. This one's from Australia for those from Australia. Now, pewter shows up everywhere. The country of origin does not matter. You will find plates similar to this, obviously not as fancy, just normal everyday plates in almost every country on the globe. From the time frame from the 1700s, even before that. Many people miss these. As I said, showed one of these in a haul before. Knowing what other people don't know is how I make money. Dom, Primetime Treasure Hunter, we talked about stuff like this. He makes a lot of good money, as I do too, with comic books, because most people think the newer ones aren't worth much, or buying big lots of just junker comics aren't going to get you any money. But I routinely sell stuff I pay pennies for decent money. 10, 20, 30, 40, $100 for many of these items. So now this one here is a portrait of Frederick the Great of Prussia, probably circa 1790s, 1810, 20s era. Really nice. Someone probably engraved this in there by hand. This is not a stamped out design. To get a design like this, it had to be hand cut into the piece. So lettering, the wheat on the outside, and his image are also all hand done. Now, touch marks are on the back, are what I usually find. Nice touch mark on here. Most plates I find have something similar, at least in size of the marking and construction. So U.S. ones would have an eagle with some names across it. French ones could have different designs as well. So $600 on this plate. Now here's a whale oil lamp. There's many different styles and designs in these. Many people may not even realize that's what this is. Now, I've known about whale oil lamps for quite some time. We have found them before at antique malls especially, or local live auctions, in some cases flea markets. For 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks I've paid for these types of things. Even beat up and dark colored and broken, I can still sell these type of items. These go back to the seafarer days of whaling and such forth. Really nice, unique item here. $423 on this one. Another plate. This one goes back to the 1600s. It's fairly plain. It has touch marks, as you can see. And just like silver, those touch marks can be used to identify the company that made this. $394. Not an insane amount of money for something like this at all. We have found many plates in the, say, $200 to, say, $500 range. Most people don't mess with these or realize the age or that they can sell for that type of money. Most people just look at them when they're all beat up and dark and dingy and think they're not worth much money at all. That's why I can make some decent money. Now you can see the back's dark on this one. This isn't anywhere near as dark as I've found these. You can clean some of them up, but I wouldn't honestly recommend it. I would just leave any of these pewter pieces as they are. Leave the patina on them. Another plate, 17th century, which dates this to the 1694, 1600s basically. It's a charger, meaning it's a larger piece than just a plate. It would have brought out to the main course, again, everyday items to most people a couple hundred years ago. Into the Civil War era, you would still find some pewter plates. Mostly it was tin at that point, but the same design you find on pewter, you will find on tin, and even brass in some cases, as well as sterling. This whole design and shape are well used throughout history. $369 for a John Weber piece. You can look these up. It's something you will find across the board. Barn sales, barn staple pewter, just what you would expect to find from the 16 and 1700s. Another one here. I love the earlier plates. This is a Danforth II, dating from 1775. It's in the pewter guide. I have seen some of these. $336 and 31 bids. Let's see if they have a mark on it. Just touch marks on this one. You look them up, you can do well with these types of pieces. Again, they all look the same until you know what those markings mean. So I take chances on these types, and I'm usually pretty good on these sorts of items. I love the earlier plates. I've had probably 60 or 70 early plates like this in my day. Have one here right now, as you saw again in my last haul video. Now, pewter comes on all types of different items. This is a 1910 circa St. Joseph, Missouri, Getz beer mug stein with a lid on it. Just a typical advertising piece of the day, something you would have found in a bar possibly even. $616 with 40 bids on them. Any of these early beer ones, whether they have pewter or not, are a good area to source on. Now, here is from the Never-Ending Story, the Rock Biter. This is a 2.5-pound piece of metal. Now, this is probably a designer one. This is something you could honestly do in your house on your own if you really wanted to. Carve it, make a mold, cast it in pewter or lead, and there you go. This is a really interesting one. Now, it doesn't say it's marked, so my assumption is either it's a display piece or something somebody made on their own. $474. Never-Ending Stories from the 80s, so this is a relatively new piece. Another plate. This is an American one. Now, this one has an eagle in the center of it. That's the style of eagle you want to find. It's just a really unique piece. It has the shield, the whole works. Let's see if it has a marking on the back side of it. It does have a mark on the rim, it looks like, but that's about it. Some damage, some deterioration on it, but still $306, 51 bids. Now, it doesn't have to have an eagle to be an American piece, but 95% of all American pieces that we have found have had an eagle on them of some sort, whether it looked like a chicken or like this one here. Really nice one here in my book. I love the earlier plates. Another one here. Now, this is a larger piece. This is a charger. Again, it would have been made to carry like a whole chicken or something like that. This one they date to about 1682. Now, 17th century means the 1600s. 18th century means the 1700s, 19th century means the 1800s, and the 20th century obviously is the 1900s. So just FYI, this one went for $270. Triple reeded are the decorations on the edge of the plate, the reeding on the very edge. It's triple reeded. It has 3 rows of reeding on the sides of it. It's an English-British piece as well. Nice early one. Didn't go for a ton of money, but again, it's early, it's bona fide, it's a nice early piece. 24 bids as well. Now, here's another interesting item that people are surprised. These syringes from back in the day were made out of pewter. I've dug a few from Civil War sites. They go way back because it was easy to mold these pieces. Glass wasn't prevalent. This would hold up better out in the wilds if you're doing it as like a medical surgeon in the military or something. $195. Not an insane piece to find. You will still run into these at auctions and flea markets occasionally. Now, for most of these items, you won't find something like this at a thrift store, but you'll find the plates, the cups, the pitchers, even stuff into the 70s and 80s that's made out of pewter still carries a value. So anyway, just a nice piece here, $195. Snuff boxes. Now, this is another area that you will find stuff. Now, snuff boxes in general are worth money. So $195 on this one. We found snuff boxes made out of all kinds of things. Gutta percha, wood, lead, pewter, as you see here, brass, tin, sterling silver. I've even seen a gold one. Never owned one, but I've seen one. So snuff boxes are a good area. I have a video coming out on snuff boxes if you're interested. So $195. Another Chinese pewter piece here, packed tongue teapot. Really interesting. This is more modern than some of the earlier ones we were showing you, probably 20s, 30s. Really nice piece, almost an Art Deco in design. Dragon handle, that's probably onyx or jade on the handle, and then the stone in the middle is kind of up in the air on that one. It could be another form of brown jade or something. Really nice one here. $190, not an insane price. These show up at local auctions quite often, or estate sales. I even have run into one of these at a garage sale once before, so didn't know what it was, the owner. So 5 bids, $190. Now, this is just another piece here, chess sets. There's a ton of pewter chess sets out there. Civil War for one, there's some presidential. Here's a Disney one for Fantasia, $625. Boxed or not, even if you don't have a board, the pieces are what's worth the money in these. Civil War chess sets sell for some good money. Even the pewter pieces from some of the newer Monopoly ones can still sell for some decent money. But that's what I have for you today. Well, there you are. Hopefully that gave you some thoughts and some ideas. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified if I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell a friend.